Hi everyone, welcome back to Becky's Crafts and Goodies. Now there have been a few changes in the announcements made regarding the coronavirus, so I just wanted to pop on just to chat to you really, just to make sure everyone's okay. I know I had lots of comments on the previous video and I think it definitely helps with us all talking about it and making sure, you know, we don't feel too isolated even if we are in so-called isolation. So the advice has been and still is to stay at home. So there is a lot of talk about social distancing and we'll be talking a little bit more about that later on, and it's about reducing the risk. So there's a national effort to reduce the spread, and this is our chance to do our bit. Now the government have since last night closed pubs, clubs, gyms, leisure centres, places where a lot of people can gather, and that's hopefully reducing the risk. And by reducing the risk we will be easing the NHS, and that is the whole drive that the government are doing at the moment. They're trying to do something called to ease the curve, and if we can reduce the social amount that we all interact, then it's going to reduce the spread of the virus as well. So definitely that's something that we can all do. So there's no guarantee as well if you catch the symptoms whether they're going to be mild. I think a lot of people are kind of playing down the virus and thinking that we're kind of overreacting and things, but the long and short of it is this virus kills people, and if you're a carrier and you go and visit, let's say, your nan who's in her 70s, who's got underlying health condition, you go and visit her, unbeknown to you, you already have the virus because that's already in your system, but you haven't got any symptoms as yet. You can pass that on to her, and quite frankly it can kill her or him or whoever else that you pass it on to. Now it is serious, and it is as serious as that, and on the NHS website there are some fantastic guidelines, more about the social distancing, more about if you experience symptoms. They do advise you to stay at home if you've got symptoms, being a persistent cough, not a cough if you just pop outside or even if you smoke or something like that. It's a persistent new cough. Also you will have you'll have a high temperature, and they also said you would feel hot on your chest and possibly your back as well. Now they're not recommending that you visit the doctors, or the hospital, or any out of hours. They are recommending that you stay at home for a period of 7 days and more. If obviously it gets worse and your breathing gets worse, obviously they are, you know, contact 111 because you may need medical intervention. So definitely don't suffer alone if things do progressively get worse. But by not going to the doctor's surgery, you know, one person can potentially spread that to so many other people. And because this virus lays kind of without people realising they've got it for a short period of time, you think of all the people that you can come into contact with. And it's not just the people you come into contact with, it's the things that you touch as well. So let's say for instance I've got it, don't realise I've got it, and I sneeze, wipe my mouth or do something, put my hand on a trolley, take myself around shopping. The next person that's going to come and touch that trolley is going to touch that with all those germs on, and they're going to wipe their nose, rub their eye, and that's how as well it can get transferred. So it's not just about going and being in close proximity to people, there are other ways to do it, and that's why we say and we advise to wash your hands thoroughly, and getting the kids to do that too. So it is really, really, really good you know, advice. Now at the moment there's lots of places that have been closed down, pubs and bars, but we still technically have our freedom. We haven't been put on lockdown, and I think that that would be one of the last resorts for the government to do, and it depends if we behave ourselves. So if we step it up, we stay at home, bite the bullet, then we're possibly not going to put in complete quarantine, you know, but this rides on us. If people are going out blatantly ignoring it and being reckless with it, then we will, I'm sure, in time get put on lockdown, because the deaths are stacking up and they have to curb it. They can't let it grow. It's too dangerous. Thousands of people could die from this, so it is that deadly serious. Now obviously with the isolation, the self-isolation, there is isolation, there is the vulnerable are going to be self-isolating. They are at risk. It's the over 70s, those with underlying health conditions. We've got pregnant people. So there are a list of those people on the NHS website as well. So please feel free to check that out. But with self-isolation and with taking yourself out of work, there is that financial burden, that financial worry. Now, Rishi Sunak is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and with the speeches yesterday, they were on the news. Boris Johnson and the Chancellor of the Exchequer made some announcements of how they are going to help the country get through this. And obviously, financial burdens is going to be a real big. If people are poorly and they think they can't pay their rent, their mortgage, or their bills, a little bit poorly, some people are going to go to work, even though they know they shouldn't, but they are petrified that they will lose their house, they won't be able to feed their children, you know. So what the government have done is they've got a job retention scheme. So if you haven't been laid off by your company, there is a new thing that's been put forward by the government where they will pay 80% of your wages, and this is something that your business can apply for. I think you have to be on the PAYE scheme to be able to claim it, but there is that. So if you have got a job and you haven't been laid off, that is something. They are doing 3-month mortgage breaks as well if you have a mortgage. There's extra tax relief if you pay tax. I'm not sure if that's just self-employed. You will have to just check that out. There's an increase in housing benefit, universal credit and working tax credit as well. So that will therefore help private renters with those payments. Self-employed, what they're doing is a universal credit which is equal to SSP. I think that still needs a little bit more work, because from what I can gather, they'll be earning quite a bit less. So I'm not sure how that's working out. But obviously with the social distancing, we're all in, you know, this kind of situation. So it really needs looking at. But from what I've heard, I think the government are very much behind businesses, very much behind people, and I think that they are trying to get these into place maybe before they have to enforce us all to stay at home. So hopefully it doesn't ever come to that. But also what I want to say is, if you are socially distancing yourself, whether it's because you're poorly yourself, or whether it's because you've got a relative that's at risk, so you're isolating so you can still visit them, because that is something that you can do as well. You know, say if your mum is poorly, or your dad's poorly, or your aunt or your uncle, something like that, and they can't go out, what you can do is you can isolate yourself, and therefore you'll still be able to visit those, as long as you know that you are free of symptoms, you're not poorly, and you've gone through that kind of incubation period yourself. If you're not coming into contact with anybody else, then you're absolutely fine to be in contact with them. It's just being sensible, and it's using common sense, you know. So with the social distancing, I kind of made a bit of a list of things that we could do. One thing is to keep a diary. Now, wouldn't it be good, because this is going to go down in history books, isn't it, especially medical history books. We're going to look back, there's going to be, you know, all the medical problems throughout the ages, and this is going to be one of them. So you could keep a diary of events, things that's happened, things, maybe they sound quite silly, like went to the supermarket, couldn't buy any eggs today, couldn't buy any flour, you know, things like that. Take pictures of the shelves, put them in like a scrapbook or something like that, because you can show generations to come, this is what it was like, you know, this is what happened. A lady came into where I work a couple of days ago, and she actually looked petrified, and she originally came from Poland, and she said to me it reminded her of when she was a child and she was 5 years old, and she was going to the supermarkets. There was nothing on the shelves, and people would queue for hours and hours at like 5 in the morning, and people would just barge past. They wouldn't care if a child was there and the child would get knocked over. And she said this time reminds her of that, and we will talk a bit more about that later on. But if you can keep a diary, that is a log of events, and also by writing it down helps to kind of get it out, and it stops you kind of festering on it. And once you've kind of put it on a bit of paper, you can think, right, that's that done. I'm not going to worry about that anymore. We can also use this time to rest, because it is a forced rest, isn't it? So sometimes we don't slow down, and you know, I have been absolutely shattered for a long time, and it's forcing us to slow down. Physically, we are being made to slow and to stop. So rather than taking it that, oh my goodness, I'm not allowed out, I can't do this, I can't do that, look at the things that you can do, things that you couldn't do before that you can do now, you know. So we've got to try and change the way that we're looking at this whole situation and take it to our advantage by doing things like getting the jobs done at home that you've been putting off for a long time. You can play board games, you can bake cakes, you can go for a walk, because you still can go for a walk right now. You can drive in the car. Now, children obviously are falling into the same rules of social distancing that adults are, and that makes it a little bit tricky, because obviously the schools have been closed. I do believe that some schools are open for key workers and people that work in certain sectors to keep the country going. I've got childcare, which they're helping, and maybe the government will do something else for childcare at some point. Now, a lot of children are now being thrown into something called homeschooling, home education, whatever you want to call it. Now, to me, many of you know that's probably not a scary thought at all, because I have actually done it in the past. But you also have to be aware of the impact it's having on you as a parent, and it's about being level-headed with it. And no one's expecting you to be a teacher that's been to university and understands everything going about every subject. No one is asking you to do that. This is about keeping your child safe. It's about keeping the education ticking over. You're not being expected to sit GCSEs to see how much of a great teacher you've been after this period. If your child is physically, mentally, and their well-being is happy at the end of this, then you've done your job. That is what we have to do, and what we learn along the way is a bonus. And I know we're going to help, and I know there's so many websites out there that are either offering free subscriptions where they would used to have to pay before. I'm also going to put a list of websites in the description. Twinkl's a very good one. There's worksheets you can print off, so you don't have to think of the ideas yourself. There are so many companies out there that do this and online resources for you, so you know, don't panic. But also don't just look at the academic aspect, because it's not, learning isn't just about being the cleverest kid on the block. It's about are children good with their hands? Can they do craft projects? Could you learn them to or teach them to bake? You know, could you teach them to make a meal out of just a few pounds? How can you feed a family when you don't have many supplies? You know, can they do woodwork? Make Play-Doh? So there's lots and lots of different things that you can do, and don't give yourself a hard time if you don't know what to do, because this means you're human, and if you're panicking about it, it means you care. Okay, so just give yourself a break. We're too hard on ourselves and we're too hard on everybody else, so we just need to stop doing that and be a little bit easier on ourselves. Now, the advice for the distancing for children is that families that live together are fine to actually play and interact together. They're not advised to be in large groups. Now, obviously, we've got Mother's Day coming up on this Sunday. Personally, I will not. I've arranged with my mum and family, and we will not all be in the same room at the same time. My mum's got underlying health problems. She's been self-isolating. My children haven't been to see her. Now, on Mother's Day, I definitely desperately want to see her. So, it sounds really stupid, but what we're going to do is we're going to go round and we're going to stay the other side of the glass. I know that sounds completely ridiculous, but if one of us pass something on to my mum, then I will never, ever, ever forgive myself. You know, so we are going to go and see her, but we are going to, you know, keep glass between us, so to speak. Now, if you have, how can I say this? If you have children that are interacting with other children, you are increasing the risk of spreading the virus. if you have different families where the dad's going out to work and he's coming home and he's got children, and those children are interacting with other children in the family, and then they're going to see grandparents, you are putting your family at direct risk. Now, I know this is hard, and I know emotions come into it, and we all have our relatives, but our head has to rule our heart on this. Unless everybody is in isolation and there's nothing else coming in from outside, you should not be visiting as a family people that are at risk. So you really have to take these steps really carefully, and I know it's hard, but what we are trying to do is to stop this spreading any further, because it will kill people. It's as simple as that. Now, that being said, there are some things, other things that you can do. Now, there's a YouTuber called Jo Wicks, and he's going to be doing some PE exercise classes for kids. He's doing them at 9 AM Monday to Friday. So he's going to be the nation's PE teacher for a little while. And I'm going to put his YouTube channel in the description down below. So if you want to check that out with your kids, that will give you half an hour break. Let them watch that. You can have a nice cuppa until you know you're ready to attack the world. And don't forget YouTube too, because there are so many things. You can learn to do absolutely anything on YouTube. There's tutorials for everything. For all the years it's been running, it's just been stacked up and made to watch. So you can learn how to, you can watch it to relax, you can watch it to learn, you can watch it to entertain yourself, and you know, you are then also supporting all the people that are making the videos and all the content creators. So, you know, there is that as well. Now, you've got to think to yourself, why has this happened? It's a big upheaval. It's a big deal, quite frankly. And I'm thinking, I don't know if any of you guys agree with me, but I'm thinking that we all need to be a little bit more grateful. Our world in the past week or two is completely different now to what it was a couple of weeks ago. Potentially it could be different still in 2 weeks' time, 2 weeks after that, 2 weeks after that. I think sometimes people take for granted that the life that they have. Now, if we take a look at supermarket shelves, for instance, now, if you go into the supermarket, they're completely bare. Absolutely nothing. Now, that is, it's horrible. It is completely shocking, and that is one of the things that's kind of angered me the most, that people's greed. Now, I know if you're in isolation, you have to get extra supplies. I'm fully aware of that. I completely understand. But the rudeness that people have had, and the what about me, that is what really annoys me. And I've seen a picture of an old lady, she's standing with a little trolley by a completely empty shelf. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Who feeds those people? Who looks after those people that have taken care of us? That is reason in itself to not be so selfish when you're taking 3-4 items off the shelf that you don't actually need. Okay, so the supply chain, the food supply chain can cope. There are delivery drivers that are still working. There are shop workers that are still working. There are farmers that are still working. The food supply is there. The problem comes when people are greedy. Yes, they panic. Yes, you need extra supplies for isolation, but it's got out of hand. Okay, if we all act sensibly, there'll be plenty to go round. There really, really will. If you're in isolation, get some extra supplies, do some online orders if they can do them, because I know that they're stopping those. Ask people to pick some bits and pieces up for you. You know that you've got things, and some people have got toilet rolls, quite frankly, to last them until 2030, I'm sure, and it's just ridiculous. Now, talking about the food and that sort of thing, with the shelves being empty and the feeling of gratitude, I can't help but think maybe we're being brought back, but centralised a little bit more. Now, some people in the world don't have enough money for food shopping every single week. They worry how they're going to pay their bills, and if they went into a shop and the shelves were full of all the food they wanted to buy, they couldn't buy it because they didn't have the money. So there are people that live like this every single day of their life. They don't have the money for food, they don't have the money to pay for their bills. They can't go out to the pub socialising. They can't pay for meals to eat out. They can't pay to afford to go to the gym. They can't go to the cinema. They can't do the leisure activities. This is real for thousands upon probably millions of people all over the world. They can't afford to do this. And people are moaning because they've got to stop doing it for a couple of weeks or a month or however long it takes. So this is what brings me to the fact that I can't help but think we're all being told to be grateful for what we do have. And if you can afford to take your family out for a meal every week, we should be grateful for that, because there are thousands of people that can't do that and will never be able to afford to do that. As long as we've got a roof over our head, we've got a family that loves us, or people, not even a family, people that put a note through the door and say, "Are you okay? I'm here for you." That would mean so much to an elderly person. They probably have nobody that even visits them anyway. And if you put a note through to say, "This is to cheer you up," why don't you get the kids to paint a stone, paint a little flower on it, wrap a little handwritten note round it, pop it on the doorstep for an elderly neighbour. They can open that up, put little poems through the door, words of encouragement. Why not contact places like care homes, people that don't have visitors, or people that can't see their family right now. Get your kids, this is something to do, get your kids, draw a picture, happy picture, smiley faces, send a big pile of them through the post to the care home. Obviously check it's okay, send it to them. Give them out to the old people. How do you think that small act of kindness is going to make those people feel? You would not imagine. We're being brought back to basics. We're being forced to go back to basics. And through all of this, being sensible and kindness will get us through it. 100%, without a doubt. The NHS and the people that work for them, right from the doctors, the nurses, the cleaners, the receptionists, everybody that works for them, you are doing an absolutely fantastic job. But let's not forget the bankers that keep the country going, the delivery drivers that keep the foods going. There are such a wide variety of professions that are helping this country to go. And I know that 65,000, doctors and nurses have been asked to come back out of the retirement to help cope with the possible strain. Now we can do our bit by not spreading this around everywhere and causing unnecessary pressure on the NHS. Now the NHS in this country is free, okay? But they are all humans. They have all got families. Now my sister-in-law is a midwife. She's married to my brother and she's got 4 children, 2 of which are quite young. Now, she is working all hours that she can in the day. She's coming home and finishing a shift and she's having to go back again. Nurses are doubling their shifts, tripling. And the strain on them and their families is unbearable. And if all we have to do is to not go and visit a couple of our mates on a Saturday night to help ease people like that, then surely we can make those sacrifices. And it's about being grateful for these people too. And being grateful. Yes, they get paid for their job, but they don't get paid for the abuse they receive. Neither do the people in the shops. They don't get paid for being absolutely exhausted and giving everything they can. They don't also get paid for risking getting this virus themselves. My sister-in-law is directly putting herself and her family at risk for you guys, for all of us. And that is true for millions of people that work in the NHS and in those sectors that I've mentioned. So we have to be grateful for them. We have to show our gratitude. We can't forget the elderly and we can't forget those at risk. So please do think, about how we can pull together for this. And we need to make sure that it's pulling us together and not pulling us apart as a nation. And all over the world, this is not just limited to our country. This is everywhere. Now, I know the shops are opening early for some NHS workers. My sister-in-law had been working all week. She went to go and get some food shopping the other day and she got barely anything. So she's a midwife looking after all these pregnant ladies that are being told to stop work because you're at risk, quite rightly so. but her own children she cannot feed because she's looking after people. That is unfair, and I'm very, very pleased that companies like Tesco's and various other shops are opening an hour earlier to let people from the NHS and certain sectors come in and get their food, because it is really important that we keep this going. And how we act now will shape our children's future, and it will have a direct impact on all of our families' lives. If we lose a member of our family, then that's going to be devastating, especially if we think we could have prevented that ourselves. So I know it's a bit of a serious kind of vlog, a bit of a serious message, but through it all, I hope that you take the fact of using the time wisely. If you're not sick, be grateful that you're not sick. Make your diaries, do your jobs that you need to do, talk to people that you probably hadn't spoken to in years, build some bridges, stop being too busy to do the normal everyday things in life. You know, take it as a positive. We have to change the situation and look for the positives in it. And the fact is, we will get through it. We all will get through it, but we have to get through it together. We have to pull together as a family, as a nation, as a world, and we will get through it. Remember, spread the love, not the virus. Now you take care of yourself, and I will see you all very soon. Take care. Bye for now.